Thank you everyone for joining us online, and for those of you here with us in person today. Sorry for the slight delay. They're getting started. It's always some technical issue, but thank you for coming and for joining us. The first time we've done a social event. So today's format is we're just going to do a Q&A. So we're not going to go through our usual process and telling our stories so much. It's going to be more question and answer. So those of you who are online as well can submit questions, and I should be able to read them here and ask either any three of us or all three of us any questions, or any individual one of us, and we'll be happy to address those. And then we'll do an energy transfer and activation as well.
Anybody here new to Flower of Life? New to our work? Never been here? Okay, so we have a few new people. Anyone not familiar with our work or not seen our videos online? Okay, good. Welcome. Welcome. So we're here with Flower of Life. For those of you who aren't familiar with the organization, we are a group of conscious beings coming together to create change in the world. And that happens in many different areas for us. We have our expo. We have a youth movement. For those of you who aren't familiar, we have a kids camp we're launching this summer for kids 9 to 18 who are gifted. We have a variety of projects that we're working on to support humanity that we'll be rolling out in the future. And our group is growing. So if any of you are interested in joining, volunteering, we'd be happy to have you across the world, even those of you who are online, because we have volunteers from all over the country that help us with various things. So welcome.
I think if any of you online can't hear us, let us know. It looks to me like the audio is working okay, but it shouldn't be an issue. So anybody have any questions to start out about anything?
I had a question that I kind of can start us off with, because I think it's a topic that rolls into a lot of what's happening on the planet today. And those of you who are familiar know that I have an inner circle community on Facebook where people post questions, comments, issues that they're having. And one of the questions that came in today was, how do you deal with people who are asking you about things like fluoride without taking them down that rabbit hole of scaring them half to death about why we have fluoride on the planet and what's really going on? And so I wanted to address that here, because I think that's something that we're going to experience more of because of what's happening on the planet, because things are shifting so fast. And because of this pole reversal that I've been talking a lot about in my session work, we're going to have more awakening. I think, and I notice it, how many people are noticing that people that you wouldn't think bringing this stuff up are just all of a sudden talking about it. So for me, and maybe you can share too, both of you, about how you feel about this, but when this used to happen to me, I would go straight to the fearful stuff, because I was in the midst of that, going down that rabbit hole and just appalled at what I was finding out about what's really going on with some of the stuff. And I found out really quickly that that doesn't work very well. So what I choose to do now is, instead of going into the why, I go into the how of what I do and what some of my general conclusions have been. So in a conversation like that, if someone were to say, what's your take on fluoride? I would just say, there's a lot of information out there that I've looked at, and I've come to a conclusion that it's just not good for me and my family. And this is what I do to prevent fluoride in my life. I've chosen to put in a reverse osmosis filter. My kids go to a conventional dentist, and they are very clear on my stance that they don't get fluoride treatments in the office. We, filter our water. We avoid it at all costs. And that way, Ethan's smirking at me because I think he would take it a little further. But that's the way I handle it, because I feel like that it's almost more inviting and comfortable to have someone come into your world and find out how you're handling it versus what you know about it, so that you're not trying to lead them down a path that they might be resistant to at the end of the day. So, yeah. Thoughts on that? Yeah.
Is anybody on the government side, or whoever put fluoride in the water in the first place, are they looking at it at all?
Yeah.
Are they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we had
questions.
Yeah. So the question was, is anyone in the government even looking at the fluoride issue? And yeah, so So Flower of Life has had an activist group on and off throughout its evolution, and one of the things that we were doing was trying to prevent things like this from happening. And I've seen a lot of it on the state and local level where people are going in. But what's interesting about this, and you might have some different knowledge than I do, is they're not addressing it from the health perspective, because that's hitting up against a brick wall. But where they are having a lot of success is addressing it financially, because it costs a lot of money to put fluoride in a community water source. And a lot of these local municipalities and governments are trying to cut budget. So people are coming in and saying, hey, let's look at how much it's costing to put fluoride in the water. And there's been some success there. And I know some local communities have completely wiped that out. There's been some in Michigan too.
Yeah, I don't remember where.
I don't remember which ones. But that's, I'm not up to date on that. But most definitely it's being talked about at the federal level. I don't know. But this is a local issue. And I think if people are to start addressing it that way, we would probably have a lot of success getting it out. Because if you start looking at the line item, the budget line item, for putting fluoride in the water, it is exorbitant in how much it costs. So it's hard to justify. It's funny because, the reason that they say they put it in the water is for teeth and health. And so a lot of the people that are on the leading edge of this movement locally are saying, look how much money we're spending for teeth when we've got people who can just go to a dentist, right, and care for their teeth that way. So it's happening. It's happening, yeah. Yeah. Other questions, thoughts?
Go ahead.
Well, it's off topic about reptilians.
Yes.
I understand that their influence is lessening. And also, are there any other similar entities that have a similar agenda as them, how that affects us?
So the question is, reptilians, are their influence lessening, and are there other entities, beings that are affecting us? I guess this is a really big topic. But first of all, I want to make it really clear about the work that I bring in and how they talk about the reptilians, because we think of reptilians as beings that are here on our planet that are doing things to us, to humanity. But what the guides will say is we actually have a reptilian consciousness that is here. It's a non-physical consciousness. And what's happened genetically is this consciousness that we can give the whole history behind, right, came to our Earth because there was a great cataclysm within their race and needed to create through us, are here working within our DNA. So it's a DNA connection. Humanity is made up of this beautiful 12-strand DNA, which is multi-dimensional. And because of the close proximity of this consciousness, those who have a predisposition to reptilian energies found themselves turned on in that genetic and are carrying out some of what this consciousness needs in order to survive here, which is putting humanity into a singular focus, which is taking us away from our inner truth. We have all the toxins that have specific limitations for us, especially the sun is a very critical component of our structure that has been limited from us to help us to live in our fullness. What I believe is that this reptilian hierarchy that has been established here in non-physical requires physical means to keep us in our singularity. So what's happening is there's a great shift now going on between physical and non-physical. And we know this. We're becoming more familiar, adept, and integrated with our non-physical selves than ever before. And we're becoming more of a one collective because of that. And as we do that, this reptilian hierarchy cannot have the same effect in physical that it's had for centuries of time here, because we are becoming less affected by physical the more we integrate our non-physical. So are there other beings, are there other races that are here? I believe there are a variety of different beings and races that have agendas that don't serve humanity. I think that there are times on our Earth when portals are open and information is exchanged, and some of that may not be in our highest interest. I think we've been very vulnerable to that because of our grid system. So those of you who understand the grids, this is just the way information flows. We've been in in a third dimensional focus, which has established a grid system here, which is material. It's a karmic loop. It doesn't connect universally. And that's, I think, how some of these beings and races have been able to access our energy field. But there's a new grid that has been stabilized here and is active and becoming more expansive. It is multidimensional. And as we continue to create new timelines, we are stabilizing this grid. I think that the more this grid becomes stabilized, we're going to have less influence, or we will be influenced less by these reptilian hierarchies or other races or beings that can manipulate us or be carried in our energy field. I mean, there's a singular component of that as well. We're talking about the overall picture of humanity. I think in our soul vibration, in our singular experience, we can become very vulnerable as well to different races of beings that we're connecting with. And I will always go back to the key being vibration. If our vibration is aligned and in the highest integrity, we're going to connect with the beings that match that. Make sense? Answer your question? Yeah.
Question from online. How long until we can take care of all of our dental and medical needs without doctors, just with energy work and intentions, etc.?
Do you want to take that?
You can start.
Well, our medical system is a part of that hierarchy. I mean, if you talk about old grid, we see this, right? Our medical institutions, you know, all of these things were formed in that old grid. So our medical institution is actually an old grid timeline when you think about it. So as we continue to expand and evolve, we're actually creating already the replacement for that timeline, because that's how it works. So we get kind of stuck in physical, and we think, oh, the financial system's going to crash, and then what are we going to do? Well, I don't think that's how it works, because we're always creating vibrationally, right? So we always have potentials. When I go into client readings, for example, the guys will always show me potentials that are vibrating and non-physical. These are things that you've created through the mind and the emotional body that have yet to ground here in physical form. As a collective, we have these as well, and we're already starting to see some of these potentials manifest in the new grid. So, for example, we have alternative healing technologies coming to the surface. We have so many healers, and believe me, I see them all week long in my client sessions that are coming to the planet. They are the ones that are going to be replacing this medical institution. But how long is it going to take? That's hard to say, because these vibrational potentials don't operate in linear time like we do. So there's a lot of factors that affect this. Our creation, our vibration, our continued ascension. But I will say in general, I do believe the 2020s are going to be really huge, especially for our healthcare system and medical. And I think that a lot of what we're already creating right now is going to be setting the stage to replace a lot of what's not working. Because remember, these old timelines, just like this reptilian consciousness, they need physical. Physical means to affect physical. We're becoming more non-physically focused than ever before, which means our medical institutions are failing us, not only because they've been developed in this third dimensional material way, but also because they can't address our new structure. You know, we're becoming new humans. And so we have to manifest the tools, the teachings, all of the things to support this new human structure.
Now, I want to say, I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the underlying idea of medical doctors or even the governmental system and things like that. The problem is with the fundamental consciousness of those things. So as a collective right now, a collective consciousness on our planet, the consciousness is not high enough to support a more enlightened society with vibrational healing and those sorts of things, but we're starting to move in that direction. So what you're going to see is hospitals and the medical system are going to evolve, and you're going to see a lot of individuals coming into very advanced healing abilities and things of that nature. And, you know, you can't, as you know, many of you see, you can't vote a president into office and expect the world to change, because they're all the same, right? It doesn't really make a difference, and you're not really voting anybody into office anyway. So at the end of the day, it's not about the system itself that's flawed. It's about the consciousness that underlies the system. So the consciousness, as it evolves, the system will evolve, the medical will evolve. And so where I'm seeing this is, I work with a lot of very gifted people, and I'm seeing individuals who have really advanced healing abilities that are starting to come out into the world. So we're seeing the whole medical system. You're going to see two things. You're going to see individuals coming out into the world with very advanced healing abilities. It's already out there. And there are even, now I've never met this person, but from what I understand, there are even, there's somebody in Russia who I've heard about who is able to regrow teeth and regrow organs in the human body, and has been teaching people how to do that. But he's a little bit underground because he gets into trouble for doing that. So anyhow, there are individuals like this in the world. They're outliers at this point. But as the consciousness of the planet evolves, it's going to become more and more commonplace. So you're going to see that, but you're also going to see on the medical side, things are going to evolve too. So in the end, we're going to meet somewhere in the middle, where modern medicine will advance to a point where the consciousness will support something that is, you know, more in line with healing, and we're going to see people's lifespans increase and things like that. So I think both will happen together, and we're seeing many advancements in those areas. Now, Pluto's going into Aquarius in 2022 to mid-2040s, which is a time of community. So it's been in Capricorn in the recent decade, and Capricorn is when the system and the governments and so on come into power. So we've had more restrictions on society and things like that in the recent past, but when it goes into Aquarius, you're going to see the people actually will control the world. So mid-2020s, or rather early 2020s through the mid-2040s, we're going to see where people are going to be the primary influences in society. And so that's where I think we're going to see a lot of those changes take place, and also a lot of technological innovation is going to come down the line during that time as well. That's going to make our healing much more advanced than it is now, not only on the alternative spiritual healing side, but also on the mainstream healing side. Unfortunately, well, nothing's good or bad, but the only reason our medical system is where it is now is because they're primarily influenced by the pharmaceutical organization. It's not really about healing, but keeping people maintained on drugs. That's going to change in the future. So I see a lot of hope there, and there are many things on the technological side that are. Whoops! I think I just screwed up here. There we go. Sometimes a little bit of a challenge trying to run the show and be in the show. So anyway, hopefully that answers that question.
I'd like to also say something. On a personal level, my different doctors, I have a few that I go to, they're watching and amazed at what has been happening with me through working with the light workers. And I always tell my main doctor that I tell him what his aura is. I tell him what he's seeing at the moment. I'm telling him, your gray's getting less, and you're getting the more green healing color. And he says, "You're the only one that can do this stuff." He says, "You're just about right." So, even one person working with mainstream doctors, and they see that growth and change. It's important for everyone that has noticed a change to point it out to their doctors, and it reaffirms that there's more than one way to heal.
Yeah, so much integrated medicine coming. I mean, we see it already, but one thing I wanted to add to Ethann's comment is, oftentimes when the guides will address questions about disclosure, for example, like where are the ancient tablets from Atlantis? They'll say, well, they still exist here, they're just in another dimension. And when humanity as a collective matches that dimension, that information will obviously be revealed. And it's really similar to the interplay of these two grids, because we have a lot of people that are creating in that new grid who are alternative healers. And some of their work is, obviously out there and people are using it, but it hasn't become mainstream. And that's because we're inching up in our consciousness to pull and match and draw that so that it does become more widespread. And I think that's already happening.
Here's a good question that I think I need to address. Why is Barbara Morey's chair so much shorter?
They were just talking about this. She doesn't like the high chairs.
I don't like high chairs. I'm comfortable more grounded.
I told her even I fall off the high chair sometimes.
Yeah, it's not because Barb's less significant than us. It's just...
No. It's my choice.
She gets to sit in the comfy short chair. So.
That's right.
All right, so next question. How are we to understand the chemical weapons attack on innocent people from a higher perspective? Want me to take it?
Go ahead. You take it. We'll both take it.
All right. Well,
this was all bound to come up today.
Yeah, I mean, I address things a lot of times from a more grounded perspective, from a more three-dimensional perspective, and Micheila and Barb tend to take it from a higher perspective. So first of all, we have to keep in mind that we as human beings all came here and chose our experience before we came here. So there is no thing as right or wrong or good or bad, although once we come into these physical bodies and we start experiencing our lives, we lose our awareness of our higher connection, our multidimensional aspect of ourselves. So from this perspective, we judge things as right or wrong or good or bad. And so from that perspective, you chose these experiences just as much as people in other parts of the world chose to be in those situations in order to learn and grow as souls. And it may not feel good to us from this vantage point, and it may not feel good to them from that vantage point. But they chose those experiences just like we choose our families and the situations that we're born into, and so on. Now, we have to keep in mind also that many of these things that happen in the world that are related to war and violence, and those things are orchestrated for to create a certain kind of control over society. So they're not what they appear to be, and many of those things are maybe not even real. They're just used to create a certain societal influence over us. So there is that aspect of it. It's hard to say if those events that are taking place in other countries are really taking place or whether they are just orchestrated events. We don't know for sure. But whether they are or not, we all choose the experience that we came here to experience when we come into this reality, as much as it might be uncomfortable for some of us to acknowledge that. So, do you want to take that from me?
Yeah. So we were just talking about this old grid. Repeat play of karma. We're on a spiral continuum, which means we're always going to revisit timelines with a new perspective. If we don't have a new perspective, we're going to continue to revisit timelines historically again and again and again. And this is the epitome of the old grid. That's what this timeline is. So what do we do? That's the question. What do we do about this? Because we get real angry and hey, we have to express the emotion about this, anger, sadness, all of that stuff. If we don't, we cannot continue to advance as humans. However, we've been really used to announcing this, getting involved in the timeline negatively, and there's an energetic here that I believe we really have to consider. Because let's take that aside and let's just look at, the president situation like Ethann brought up. We can continue to harp on the president, criticize the president, slam the president and everything that he's doing on social media every day with our friends. that's a vibration, right? So now we have an old grid timeline that we're continually matching the vibration of over and over and over again. That's how this happens. And it's how it's continued to happen time and time again. So in order to get to that new grid, we have to subtly interact with this stuff in a way that's different. And Ethan, I'm going to use you as an example. It'll be good. It's a good example. It's a good example.
I can't wait.
You know, Ethan will often say, this stuff, I don't even know about this stuff. It doesn't happen in my world because this isn't the world that I live in. Well, the guides have talked a lot about this. We have two Earths. We have this hologram, and this is essentially the new grid, old grid. Does that mean he's ignoring the problem? He doesn't care? No, he's so involved in creating a new world with all of the projects that he's launching right now that his energy is flowing in creation towards something. And if everyone were to do that here on the planet, to step aside from announcing, harping, all of this stuff, express the emotion, but don't get stuck in it. See, that's the thing. I think we get stuck in it. And when we get stuck in it, not only do we stay there, remember those vibrational potentials we're already creating time and time again. Now we have a collective full of potentials that match the same thing that we just experienced yesterday. That's going to happen again in the spiral continuum to give us an opportunity to change it. So it takes this subtle interaction with what's going on the planet, being aware of it, knowing that it's happening, but being in your lane and creating something different. And it doesn't have to look like what Ethann's doing with an organization. That's you just living your life in harmony and creating in your authentic truth. And imagine if everyone were to do that every day. We wouldn't worry about this stuff in the old grid anymore. We wouldn't have to revisit it anymore. It wouldn't replay because that new stuff that's going on is what we're gonna ground here. So that's my take on that.
That's a good point, actually, and I want to comment on that from what you said, because I wouldn't have even known this other than this person just asking this question, except for the fact that I got this new tablet to run these events on live stream, and I forgot to delete the news app from it. And yesterday it popped up and said, Donald Trump declares war on blah, blah, blah. And I said, delete that. So otherwise, I normally don't even know what's going on in the world because I'm too busy managing and creating my own world the way that I want it to be. So you all have that opportunity and ability to create. And if, like Micheila is saying, if all of us created the world that we want to live in and paid attention to that world, then that would be the only world we would live in. I find that people who suffer a lot look for suffering in the world. I want to share something I thought it was kind of funny. So we have this YouTube channel. These shows go up on YouTube as well. And so any of you watch my show where I have another guest with me? Okay. So on the shows, now I'm generally a very calm, peaceful, happy person, okay? So I can sit there for 2 hours smiling and happy and in a peaceful state while this other person is talking. So I had somebody comment on one of my videos the other day asking, she said that it made her uncomfortable that I was sitting there smiling the whole time. And, can't I say something or move around or do something so I can be a regular human being? And she says, or are you just that way? Are you just a happy, calm person? Well, by nature, I am that way more than most. But the thing is, we tend to perceive our realities through our own lens of how we experience things. So I find people who have a lot more density and more inner turmoil tend to pay attention to the things in their environment, whether it be people, world events, or whatever, where there's more suffering and pain and things like that. So it would be wise to try to focus your attention. Now, to some degree, as your consciousness grows and your density is less, you're going to naturally become happier and more focused on positive. But you can also intend to do that by focusing your mind on things that are positive. Delete the news app on your phone so it doesn't tell you about all the crazy things going on in the world. things like that to help direct your focus and your intention. And as you do that, you'll gravitate to more of the positive, happy things in the world. I mean, the world is full of things, right? I mean, there's so many people doing amazing things. But there's so many people who are so focused on all the suffering and missing out on all of that. So it's just a matter of your choice to focus and create the reality you want.
And since last year, I decided on my own personal Facebook page that if there was anything that was too negative, I deleted it. And I try to only share really positive, uplifting things, you know, because we have enough negatives around. And I choose not to, you know, share them with everyone else. So just, okay, I know it, okay, delete and move on. And I know one of my friends was stressing about certain things that were going on in the world. I said, can you personally change them? And well, no. I said, well, know that they're there and just accept that at this time there's nothing you can do and just, you know, move on and think of happier things. Because I prefer to lift people up. I mean, I even had a situation this morning where someone made a comment and, you know, and it felt negative, and I just, you know, said positive things, and it ended up being really a nice thing at the end, because I said, you have your own path, I have my own path, and, you know, I honor your path, and it was very positive. So I'm always trying to, you know, my whole life I've been making lemonade with all the lemons I get. Because it's better to be positive, you know. You always heard that terminology, smile and the whole world smiles at you, crying you cry alone. Well, I don't want to cry. I'd rather be happy with everybody else. So
I want to play off of that for a minute, because I know there's going to be the people out there who are going to be like, oh, they're just preaching positivity. We ignore everything else that goes on the planet. That's not cool. That's not what we're saying at all. Because I guess for me, what I've really begun to consider is how much awareness do we really need? Okay, so we know that our media is so skewed right now. We don't see any of the good. So we see 100% of the negative, 100% of everything that's going wrong. But there's got to be stuff out there that's happening, right, that isn't wrong. So I think it's good to be aware, but the question becomes, where does our responsibility to keep everyone in awareness begin and end? So we have this event on the planet. How many percentage, you know, of us needs to be posting about it, blogging about it, reminding everyone about it all day long? Okay, so that's the thing. That's, I think, the fine line between, you know, vibrationally matching something that we don't want to match and being aware and creating something new. Because when we stay in that lane of, you know, what we're here to do, because I have a lot of people ask me, you know, why didn't post about this? You know, what do you have to say about this? Well, I know what I'm here to say, and I know what I'm here to do. I think there are a lot of people on the planet that are here to inform us. We have a lot of people in the alternative media that are here to inform us. That's what they came to do. They're conduits for that. I'm not a conduit for that. So I'm aware of what's going on, but I don't feel like I need to step into the lane of continuing to, right, promote the things that we don't want to see. Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up something at least I've experienced in my life. It's kind of the macrocosm of our lives matches, or the microcosm matches the macrocosm.
Yeah.
So we might not be able to affect, you know, the war that Trump just started. But what's going on in our lives with our family, our friends,
yes,
our work, that is actually the same thing. As we work through those things, it's the universal pattern, you know, that starts getting worked through. So we can affect those things directly. Or
absolutely.
So we think.
I totally agree with you. Yeah, and what he's saying is that the war that we have on the planet is the war that we have with other people in our life. And I've been a huge proponent of that ever since I started channeling, because that's exactly what the guides say. But to put that in technical terms, we have a soul container, we have a higher self container, which is planetary, that's how we connect as a race, and we have an oversoul container, which is our galactic families. And we operate in these three different perspectives, but they are connected. So the wars that we create here also affect our galactic neighbors, you know? And we have to consider that, and it has to start somewhere. But some of the information I've been bringing in lately has been about how timelines have different dimensions. So to give you an example, we might have a relationship going on right now in our soul container, and it might be a very abusive relationship, and we're experiencing that abusive relationship in a specific dimension. Maybe that's the third dimension because that's the way our soul perceives it. Well, the next step up from that, right, is that higher self, planetary energy. There are archetypal patterns, imprints, history that we are replaying through our singular structure to transmute them. So the way that we interact with that relationship has everything to do with how we are a part of changing it for the entire human race, right? Then you go up from there. So that's I mean, a perfect statement or example about how we have full, I think, I don't want to use the word control, but full interaction with what's going on at that level. Yeah.
Taking Barb's comment earlier, I wanted to talk about that briefly. There's been a lot of controversy over Facebook recently because they're sharing our data with other institutions and so on. Another one that they did was, or another story that was out recently was that they did a little psychological experiment on their Facebook members. Basically, they took a group of people and they made sure that the posts that they were seeing on their feed were more negative to see what they would post. And then they took another separate group of people and made sure most of their posts that they were seeing on their feed were positive. And what they found was that the people who were seeing the more negative feed posts ended up posting things themselves that were more negative. And the people who were seeing more positive ended up posting things that were more positive. So what you're experiencing, your reality and focusing on does affect your psychology. So, I mean, that's a worthwhile thing for you to know. I mean, for me, I don't really go on Facebook other than to do the various things we do these days, but I try to be very careful about whose posts I actually am able to see. And if I see negative things, I just delete it from my wall. So, or delete that person so I don't see their posts. So that's something to keep in mind. And what you said earlier, there's a question kind of along those lines that came in. Aside from focusing on the positive in the world, don't we also have some responsibility to help those who are suffering? If so, how can we help without getting caught up in the negativity and suffering? So I'll take that first.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think the thing is we have to try to understand that the outer universe is a projection of what's inside of us. So really, the only work that there is ever to do is to work on yourself, to work on your own consciousness, your own vibration, because that determines what's projected outside of you. If you want to help other people in the world, you cannot help them from a state of suffering. So if you want to create less suffering in the world, you have to not be suffering first. You have to be in a higher vibrational state and then go out into the world and help people from that perspective. So, you know, what we're doing here, we're not focused on the suffering. We're focused on enhancing and enlightening and making people's lives better in the world. And what we do here improves the quality of the world. We're not focused on the people in the suffering and having to be in a state of suffering while helping suffering people. You can't do that. Your vibration is what affects other people, not the things that you physically do only. So if you physically, so let's say there is somebody in your life who is suffering through something. You know, let's say it is something health-oriented, and so this person is going through a lot of suffering. Does it make sense if you take on that health issue and suffer yourself? Are you able to help that person because you're now suffering? It doesn't work that way. You have to be in an empowered state to help them to transition. And ultimately, it's only you. It's your outer projection of your reality anyway. So you cannot help the suffering in the world while suffering. So you have to first take yourself out of that and elevate to a vibration where you're able to bring those people out of suffering. So what we do here in these events is to raise consciousness, remove density, Now, if we were suffering, we couldn't do that. We wouldn't hold the vibration sufficient to be able to raise the consciousness of other people and remove their suffering. But ultimately, the other thing too to consider is they have a right to their suffering as much as you have a right to your happiness. So it's not your right to take away somebody else's choice to be where they have chosen to be. But as human beings, we judge things. So we look at war and we say bad. We look at people doing nice things or humanitarianism and we say good. But neither is good or bad. They're all part of, think of your experience here on Earth as you're actors on a stage, and you are playing out your parts on stage so that you can each gain from that experience. And when the show is over, curtains go down, everybody goes home, and the show, it's done. So that's what your human experience here is like. It's not, it's not to be taken any more seriously than that. You're evolving and growing through those things. And certainly while you are playing those parts, you're experiencing the emotions and the ups and downs of that. But ultimately it is, it's a human experience that is not good or bad. It is just something that you have come here to experience together. And so there was a woman I had on my show, I've talked about her before, Natalie Sudman. She was in an explosion in Iraq some years ago. And she had a near-death experience. She basically died, and she went to this in-between reality where she met these spirit guides of hers. And she said, so one group, so she got this one guide she was working with. She felt familiar, like she knew who it was. And this guide's job was to, well, first they told her, it's not time for you to be here yet, so you need to go back. But she was severely injured in this explosion. And so she, with this other guide, she said they looked at this, what looked like a TV screen. And on the TV screen, they were playing out all the future possibilities of lives that she could live when she went back into her physical body. And because she was going to have injuries, they were playing around with, well, what if this injury happened? What would her life be like? And well, maybe, and if not that one, well, what if we gave her this injury? Then what would her life be like? So they played out all these different potential futures that she could have based on the different kinds of injuries she could come back with. And she said from that dimension where she's playing these out and she's seeing herself in this future reality with all these really severe injuries and debilitating situations, she said she and this guy, they were just laughing because they thought it was hilarious the possible future she was going to live and how she would have to live in that reality based on these injuries. So from that higher perspective, they thought it was fun. She and this other guide thought this was play, because it is. They are on the other side of the curtain. They are seeing what would be played out in this reality. And to them, it was just fun and play. So understand that when all of you came here, you thought this would be fun. You did, right? And then you got here, and it wasn't so much fun. But you thought it would be fun. So what is separating you from the awareness of it being fun? It is only your vibration, because on the other side of that, in that higher dimensional awareness, you have a connection to your greater perspective, and from there you realize that this is fun. This is just play. This is just an experiment. This is just a learning experience. And at the end of the day, you get to go home. And this was just something fun you did in between those two moments. And so she chose the future injury. She basically chose the injury she wanted to have. And she came back into this reality with those injuries. And eventually she lost her awareness of this connection, and the injuries became her life here. And she doesn't particularly enjoy them now, but from that perspective, it was just a fun thing. So we have to try to keep into perspective that our human experience here is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be an adventure, but we tend to forget that. So now as your consciousness grows, you're going to find a greater joy in your life anyway. And that greater joy is because you are getting that veil between you and the higher aspects of yourself is becoming thinner and thinner. And as it does, you make a greater connection to this broader perspective of reality. So.
Well, it's hard to follow up.
Oh.
I was just thinking, since I've gotten the flower of life, my life has been so much fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, I just want to add, you say suffering, I would say fear. I think that the problem that we have here as a collective is that we're in so much fear that when something like this happens and we're trying to respond, we're responding in a state of fear. And because of that, we're very fragmented in our energy and we don't know what to do. So that's part of why we have all this posting, blogging, and all this announcement of this stuff, because we don't know what to do when we're in a state of fear. But just like I said, we have conduits on the planet for certain things. How do you know what you're a conduit for? How do you know how you respond? Well, you can't be in fear and know that. It requires that ability to understand the inner truth and know what you're here to do and how you're here to do it. Because, I believe that we need to respond in physical, but we also have to respond in non-physical. And that's the part that we haven't gotten right. It's an intricate balance. So I can, send supplies and all of these things, and that's fine. It does advance the timeline, because anytime we send currency into a specific timeline, we expand it. And that's okay, as long as on the other side, vibrationally, we're aligned to make sure that there's something else going on to change the timeline. For me, and I know many others that I work with, I know what I'm here to do. I know how I am impacting the collective, and that in itself has to be brought to the forefront. A lot of us make ourselves small, and we don't think that what we're doing here has any input or effect. But it doesn't matter how small, it most certainly does. So when we step into that power, I think that becomes the balance, right? Of saying, okay, we can respond in physical, but we've also got our vibrational selves together too. And we know that we're doing something else that's preventing the next repeat of this timeline. Yeah.
If you have mild suffering, like I might always have a leg issue. Mm-hmm. I have a good attitude about it. I don't feel like I'm suffering, but there's times where it is. Yeah. Am I still, with it being more mild, am I still able to help other people? Because I have a sick son at home right now, and I think I'm doing him a lot of good. Even though I'm suffering, I still think I'm able to help him. Mm-hmm. So is it can you still be suffering and at this extent and help others?
Well, suffering and pain are two different things. So we should separate those two things. So if I have a pain in my leg, that's pain. Or if somebody dies and I experience sadness, that's pain. But it's not suffering. Suffering is when that pain is gone and you're still suffering about the pain that's not there anymore. So a lot of people carry this their suffering throughout their lifetimes. Or my ex-wife, she did this and this and this. Well, you've been divorced for 10 years. So that's suffering. So there's a difference. Yeah, it's an attachment to a thing that is suffering. So when I say suffering, I'm not talking about pain. You can have all kinds of pain and not be suffering. Or you can have pain and once the pain is gone, you move on with your life. And that's not suffering, even though in the moment of the pain you might have been swearing and whatever, so that's okay. Suffering is more a state of being. It's a vibrational thing. So when I use the word suffering, I'm not talking about pain. I'm talking about a vibrational state of being. And understand that your vibrational state of being attracts your reality. So if you are in a vibrational state of suffering, well, then you're going to attract suffering from the world. This is why events like what's taking place now in the world and all the other insane things that go on is just, most of our media is controlled by a very small group of people. And, well, by creating these global situations and then broadcasting it out to everybody through news apps that tell you things that you don't really want to know, they are perpetuating this lower vibration in the whole collective reality. So if right now I could broadcast our higher vibrational state of being to the whole planet through a news app, through all the positive things that are taking place in the world, we would uplift the whole planet. So in the same way, there is a collective consciousness that is fading out of power, but it's still nonetheless trying to kick and scream through its last breaths. That is still in control of our media and perpetuating this negative news in order to keep the vibration low, in order to keep people in suffering and keep people in that lower state of being. But it is changing, and it's not going to be that way for that much longer. So, does that make sense, the whole stuff? Okay, great. Yeah. Any other? Yeah, go ahead.
Allow me to share something.
Mm-hmm.
I know that lots of time I watch TV, but I have an experience years ago that I was thinking about my son, and I think about how his life is not that smooth and everything, and as I think, I keep sending him love. And all of a sudden, I feel the love come out of me and surround him. And from that moment, he got a job offer and everything. And I shared this with my friends. And then one day, one of my friends is watching the TV, and she saw a boy with the elephant disease, elephant nose. Mm-hmm. And she feels so sad about him. And she could feel very sad, very sad. Suddenly, she thought about what I said. And immediately, instead of feeling sad, she sent the boy on the TV screen with love. And she experienced the same thing that I experienced. Mm-hmm. The love come out of him, come out of her and surround that boy. And she no longer feels sad. If we watch the Middle East right now about the chemical war, we can just send love instead of feeling sad of getting to, Trump is so bad. Instead, just send love. Sometimes we see something that is maybe unpleasant to our human being. Send blessings. Oh, bless you. And you, as you practice more and more, the love will truly come out of you instead of getting into that sadness or sorrow.
So the moral of the story is just send the love out to people and watch it surround them, And that it helps you, The whole point is we got to keep ourselves healed. So if we're sending the love out, when you send out, you receive, it works for me all the time. When I used to work on people and I did massage and that, I would heal them, but yet I would feel good about that too. In my last job in the post office, when the carriers said, well, I want to go home because my shoulder hurts or that, I'd fix them up and said, no, you go back to work. But I feel good about that.
And they gave her a raise.
No, wish they had. We're not going to discuss that. But it's good when you give, you receive. And my sister even has noticed that. Recently, my sister still works at the post office. And, we're finally she's finally realizing that I'm a good resource. And, hey, I've been waiting for years. And she says, I got to call you more. So for me, that's really good because I've been sending her all kinds of positives and love and, So, it works out. And we were talking about families. So, yeah, even in the family. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, an interesting point about that is this new grid that we've been talking about. It operates in open source. So what that means is we've been really stuck in the old grid in I put in amount of time to receive something back, or in a relationship, I give this and you give that, right? But all that's changing now because that was our singular focus, and that's how we were so limited in our perception. But in an open source reality, it can start as just sending love to somebody or assisting in that way. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we can't receive as well. We just receive from different areas of our life. It's like we have this one track or one lane focus of giving and receiving, but we're opening that up into a field of potential that's really different right now. So I think that can help what's going on the planet, as well as our own creative efforts and what we're building in this new grid. And receiving for that, because we were built to source. You know, we were built to source. We're just sourcing all the wrong stuff most of the time. Yeah.
We're about an hour in. Do you want to do the activation
Up
or
to
wait?
you.
Okay. Well, let's go another 15 minutes. Anyone else have any questions online or in person?
This is totally off the subject, and it's kind of awkward for me to ask about it, but my house faces south, and I go to bed very late, and I've been noticing a really bright light in the sky that is on a cloudy night where there are no other stars showing except for this one bright light, and it is not perfectly circular. It kind of flashes a little bit. And I'm like, okay, it stays in one place. And of course, when I get up to go to the bathroom 3 hours later, it's moved a little bit. But is it just a planet and our Earth is rotating and that's why it's moved? Or why is it the only shiny thing in the sky?
It sounds to me like you have some visitors.
You know, it's only one.
Yeah.
Light.
Well, we do have some pretty huge shifts going on the planet right now. This pole reversal that I've been talking about a lot. It's vibrational first, just like everything else. So when we create vibrationally first, and then it shows up, manifests in physical. So this pole reversal, what it's doing is it's bringing in different dimensional information into our planet and into our grids. The poles themselves are moving a bit slower, okay? So we do have the physical result of that. But I think what's happening right now is we're accessing new realities. I don't know how many of you in sleep state lately have been traveling like, oh my gosh, crazy, all these different, my sleep has been insane. But I think that's probably why you're having that experience. I can't speak to what planet that is or what it is that you're seeing, but.
As it says, oh, it's just the brightest planet up there. And I'm like, well, why is it just one,
Yeah. Yeah, it could be something personal for you that you're meant to, yeah.
Yeah, if it's moving that fast, it's probably not a planet, I wouldn't think.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of hours later, it seems to have moved on the other side of my tree, where it was this side, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, we have a lot of experts. You could probably address that herself. She has objects in the sky moving all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that times and a half, and you go back and it's totally moved. It's usually not a star then. And I rule out the factor that you're probably not being monitored by the government, so it's probably not a drone watching you. Yeah, it's probably your galactic family.
Just saying hello. Anyone else? No? Yeah.
Purpose of life, or lack thereof. So, you know your purpose. I don't think I know my purpose yet. I'm a little bit like Ethan. I've been in finance for 30 years, and that's just kind of how and where I ended up. But in the last 10 years, I've gotten on this path and started with meditation, then Akashic Records, then I'm a Reiki master now. I don't necessarily practice it, but I am. But I still don't know where I'm going. And so, like sometimes in meditation, they tell you, well, don't think of anything. Then it's, well, you got to manifest. So, I'm all kind of screwed up. And I just want to get somewhere.
Yeah.
And I'm on a spiritual path, but I don't see the end.
Your purpose is to be here.
Next
question.
As he throws down the mic.
and it is my birthday. So
happy birthday.
It was a good thing to be here.
Yeah, how about that?
But that's still, I'm not sure this is still going to help me get to something.
Well, I'll give my perspective. I know you have a huge one too. So.
I already said.
You're done. You threw the mic down. You're done.
I'm done.
Ethan's exited the building. You're always in the right place at the right time. I think what I see in my sessions is So when we talk about purpose, again, we get this singular perception around purpose. There's one thing I'm here to do. I haven't found it, so I'm on the wrong path. But I don't observe that to be true. We come here with an intention. And typically in session, what I can narrow down is what that intention was for you to come to the planet in this timeline. If you're here in this room, you're a light worker, you're here doing something to affect the planet, no doubt. But you probably chose this timeline because of what's happening right now, which is this split that's going on. And a lot of people I find, they have, even me, okay, I had that background in business, marketing. I think I needed that. It wasn't time for me to step into this blueprint, which is always vibrating, always changing, being called for by humanity, right? So sometimes we're waiting for the right time to create the things that are within us, but we're assembling the pieces of that. And I really feel like that's a common theme right now on the planet is people have been assembling the pieces of what they're here to do vibrationally. And a lot of what's happening right now as we walk into the early 2020s is we're preparing to create differently. So I wouldn't get so frustrated about that you don't know that one purpose. I would say explore. Because right now, what's happening vibrationally is we are pulling together or magnetizing fragmented soul pieces. What that means is you, as a soul, exist in many bodies, in many dimensions, in many realities with a common thread. And so these soul pieces, they are causing us to want to explore, like maybe you coming here or going from finance to checking out Reiki, right? All of these different things are coming up because those fragmented soul pieces are becoming more integrated with us. So I would just continue to draw them in. And what the guides have been saying is they're going to collapse on each other. And I don't really think it's in meditation that we're meant to receive that information, right? So I'm not one that goes into meditation with any specific question. I like to just stay open because I find that later in the day that meditation will pay off really big and physical because I'll walk into synchronicities and things that give me more information about what I'm here to do and how I'm here to do it than I could possibly get in meditation. So I would say continue your meditation practice, continue exploring, just be in the present moment and aware of what's drawing you right now, and it'll come clear. And I don't think there's anything you're doing wrong. You probably took that finance, path for something that's going to apply to what you're doing next. And it sounds to me like you're in the midst of a timeline shift. We go through them constantly. We raise our vibration, we raise our dimension. The things we did before no longer make sense to us. We don't feel comfortable in those timelines anymore, so we want something else. And then we think we lack the clarity to understand that, but we're just going through a transition where we're building a new platform or a foundation to become a new person, a new identity. That makes sense?
Yep.
Okay.
I always say there's no accidents. You're here for a reason. You came here because there's a reason. Anytime I meet any people anywhere, I'm in a restaurant, in a grocery store, just walking down the road. Anytime I meet people, there's a reason, and people are always talking to me. I'm an easy person to talk to, and sometimes it's just for a minute, and sometimes they become lifetime friends. Just from the one meeting. So you may have found your tribe by coming here, and your tribe will help you with your purpose.
It's obviously significant that it's his birthday today, right,
Yeah.
Ethan?
Oh, do I need to say more?
Oh, I would, yeah. That was the lead-in to get you to talk about astrology.
I thought I already answered the question.
You did very well. You did very well.
Well,
you did so well, we want more.
I want more. Great. Okay. Well, I was once living that kind of life too. So prior to, 7 years ago, I was very heavily immersed in the business and financial world and running a marketing agency and running an international trading organization. Spent most of my days in front of a screen looking at numbers. So that was my life. But which sounds like where your life is now to some degree, right? But it doesn't invalidate that was where I needed to be at that time. So even though, see, now that I'm doing this and I've had the opportunity to look over my life, I realize that all throughout my life I was doing this. I just didn't know. So it was an unconscious thing that was happening behind the scenes all throughout my life. Just by my presence here in this reality, there was something happening around me all the time, which back then I sort of dismissed as something that didn't really happen. But nonetheless, you know, now I can see that it was. So you are where you are because that's where you are supposed to be right now. You're doing what you need to do for your experience at this time, and the only thing you need to do is to be there. But as Micheila said, you know, we're all experiencing multiple realities at the same time. While at the moment you're focused in on this one, there are many aspects of you that are in other subtly different realities. Every time you've had a thought about doing something different, that thought most likely projected into another experience. So there are many aspects of you, some that may be much farther on a quote-unquote spiritual path than you are now. But it doesn't change the fact that where you are now is also valid and important for your experience. And you'll probably take those aspects of who you are into the next phase of your journey, just like I did. I mean, this organization and all of its moving parts, and the fact that I can run technology and be up here, those are all things I learned earlier in my life, in my earlier stages of my life. Otherwise, nothing would be possible if I didn't develop those talents. Even my financial background would not was necessary to do what I do now. So those are all things that you're accumulating knowledge, wisdom, experience that you will utilize and put together in some new shape or form in your future life. I'll take a question one moment, but let me, there's somebody in my Lightworker program. I mentioned her before. She'll be here in a few months, so you'll have a chance to meet her in person. But she went to school for biology. She was a geneticist for quite a few years, and so she was working in the biotech field, very well paid. And now she's developing her an entirely new modality of vibrational healing that is working on DNA. So here's somebody who has a background in DNA, in genetics, who has elevated to a new level of that experience and is now using that background and knowledge to heal people in their multidimensional genetics and also physically in their physical bodies as well. So this is where you may take that understanding that you have and switch to a new timeline where you can utilize that understanding and talent on an entirely different level. So there's nothing invalid about where you are now, and you may actually turn it into something much better. Now, the fact that you're here on your birthday is relevant. What we do on our birthday is very significant, or even the day before, the day after, because it sort of sets the vibration for the year. So every year when you're doing something, pay attention to what you're doing on the day before, day of, day after, because there are going to be things taking place at that time that are highly influential in the year ahead. So, so that's something I always pay attention to in my life.
I want to add one thing. Free will is a huge component of what we're here to do. So sometimes we think our purpose or our, quote unquote assignment has one pathway. But when I do readings, I will always see these vibrational potentials like I've talked about. And the guides will be really quick to say that as they review those potentials, they're not giving directives. There's nothing that you have to do here. You signed up to come here to live in your highest fulfillment. So they're providing this information about these potentials to activate you, to excite you about what your potential really is, but you drive that ship. So you're here to do whatever brings you the highest and best joy, fulfillment, love, peace in your life, knowing that that expression is going to be that unique puzzle piece that actually heals the collective. So it comes from within you, not from, out there.
Yeah, you're exactly where you should be too. I mean, and you can't make any mistakes. So you are exactly where you're supposed to be and doing what you're supposed to do in this moment, in this reality. You can't screw it up. So, so striving or, not being present to where you are in this moment is not going to get you to the next thing any faster. So the best thing you can do is just be present to where you are right now and be fully in that experience, understanding that for you, this is where you're supposed to be. Just like 10 years ago, I was where I was supposed to be. I mean, it's easy for me to say, that, boy, if I started this 20 years ago, imagine where I'd be by now. And imagine what I could have possibly accomplished in the world if I had started this 20 years ago. But I didn't. And sometimes those thoughts enter my mind too. What if I had started this 20 years ago? Well, 20 years ago, the tools weren't available. The things that I'm doing now were not possible. So yes, certainly I could have done it then, but I wouldn't have had the knowledge and experience to be able to even do these things that I'm doing now. So all of the things that you're doing are valid and necessary for your growth experience. People you meet along the way.
And 20 years ago, if I think about that, back in the 80s, when I was doing aura reading for people, they weren't as open to it as they are now. So, I mean, I was like the advanced, person there, and people weren't ready for what I had to offer. I mean, I would tell people things that were going to happen in the future, and of course I was called an alarmist, and that things weren't going to happen that way, and they did, so I told them, remember, I told you 30 years ago, I told you this was going to happen, so I said, remember that, but, I'm the advanced guard, and, it's like, I lived through these things so that I can share these things and, help everyone else, I had to go through it the hard way, but hey, I'm happy, I'm happy that I went through these things because I've been able to help so many different people in so many different ways. I'm grateful for everything that I've gone through in my life. I'm grateful for it because it's helped me be more aware, be more awake, be more able to communicate with people, and people come to me and when they have a problem, it seems like I'm a problem solver. And they'll tell me their problem, and I'll tell them an answer, and they'll say, that's a good idea. So I always laugh and say, that's another one from my book of good ideas. So, yeah.
Keep in mind, you're all pioneers. We're on the verge of a very different future, very different society. And so the fact that you're all here today, you haven't missed the boat. It's just about to start happening. The age of Aquarius that's been said, people have said, well, it started in the 1950s. I think based on astrology, it really technically, in my opinion, starts in the 2020s. So you are here at the right time. You are pioneers. You are going to be a part of that future and helping bring it about and create it and help others who are stepping into that reality. So you haven't missed anything. And if you're here now, it's because you're probably on that journey to awakening, to being part of that future. So let's do the activation energy transfer.
So we're going to do a combined energy transfer / activation today. Ethan and I have done this only one time before, so it should be interesting.
Do we lose our nuts?
Off the floor.
I hate when that happens.
Oh,
that's okay.
No. Second roll. You guys are good.
do you want to explain the energy transfer, and I'll
yeah, very quickly. I mean, we're doing a combined event today, so we're not going to get deep into our stories of how all this works. But basically, for those of you who are new, you're going to have to just trust us in the process. But we're just doing a combined energy transfer and activation. So Micheila is going to do her activation, and I'll do the energy transfer like usual. So there's going to be a two-part process here, and Barb's going to be observing the energy fields in the room to let us know when you're all fully cooked and we can stop. And those of you online, you can also participate in this, and you'll be included in this as well. So just follow along the same process as if you're here in person. We'll play a little Mark Romero music in the background. during the process as usual. So it's a two-part process. I'm going to ask you all to send your density to me, and so you'll just have to trust that the process for this time. And if you're brand new, especially those of you online, if you're brand new, there are lots of videos on YouTube that explain the process a little bit more in detail. But basically, I want you to hold the intention to release any karmic density that you're ready to release today. And if you'd like, you can visualize that as a dark cloud of energy and send it from your energy field to mine. And don't worry, no harm will come to me in the process. At the same time, I'll be sending a white light energy to all of your heart centers, and Micheila will be doing an activation.
Yeah, so I just want to add my piece, because what I do is always different, and I'm just guided to tell you that what's been happening here on the planet, it's within our DNA. So remember that spiral continuum that we're on. It's a part of our record. And every timeline that we've ever been in has a higher vibrational potential.
Oh, back right there?
Oh, sorry.
And has a higher vibrational potential and a lower vibrational potential. And what we want to match is the healing. We want to match the other side of this catastrophe, disaster, cataclysm, whatever it is that we have going on here that's already resolved. So that's what I'm bringing through today, working within your DNA, and we're going to crystallize the stuff that's going to take us to the other side, or bring in the energy or vibration to match the information on the other side of what's happening right now. That serves us and everyone. Make sense? Okay.
All right, so Barb's going to be observing the room. I'm going to have my eyes closed, and I'm guessing Micheila will as well. So I want you all to just relax and breathe comfortably. We'll play a little music in the background just to drown out the background sounds and such. And just focus your intention on sending your density to me, and receive the energy that's coming from us to you. So play a little music, and we'll be silent, and just keep your eyes closed until we ask you to open them. Did time fly, or did that?
That was quick.
That was quick. Well, I think the double. I mean, I was getting chills. I was, with this double, intention here. But yeah, it went really fast. But everyone was. All of a sudden, everything just got clear. And everybody. There wasn't anything else to send.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, you two are powerful together.
I saw that clear light. Right, it was funny. Right before you ended, I had this golden light just fill the space, and then the music stopped.
Exactly.
Yeah, interesting.
It was like, wow,
Yeah.
It was really, huh?
Go ahead.
Clock visual where the time just stopped.
Time stopped. Yeah.
Usually it's longer, but it didn't take long with the combination of you two. It's like, and everybody just kind of, it felt like a lightness in the room all of a sudden, like you said, that golden light,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, look at all the smiles I see. Almost everyone's smiling.
I saw a lot of guides come in.
Yeah,
I kind of felt them pass through me into the room.
Yeah,
passing through.
Yeah, and that's I was feeling like everybody felt like they were connecting with something.
Mm-hmm. I saw that too.
Yeah.
It was like everyone was assigned a guide, somebody that passed through that was moving straight to them. That's what I saw.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, I almost want to cry. It really touched my heart today. It was so beautiful. I'm so glad that I'm part of this.
She's great. You're going to make me cry. I did see or hear there was a lot of Atlantis kind of stuff coming up today. So that could be a collective timeline that we've been on together that we're re-experiencing here in some form. Some cataclysm there, some instance there. So that seemed to be a theme of what I saw.
Question for you.
Uh-huh.
Are you aware of a group council of light called the Aeneid, and what do you know about them?
I am not familiar with them. What I want to say as that question's answered that's coming in is, so we have many councils throughout the intergalactic universe, and they form for similar intentions. So some of these are multi-raced. Multiple races come together with a similar intention for keeping the universe in balance and harmony. Some of them are directed at specific planets. There are councils that form just to assist us on the Earth. It feels to me like they're a shoot-off of some kind of like a future timeline energy from the council that's assisting Earth but has been here before. Without channeling, that's the best I could come up with. Yeah.
Okay, so anyone have any questions or anything?
Does it help sometimes if you even imagine once you're done taking care of yourself, to send you karma like from my son at home? Is that sometimes?
Sure, you can do that. Yeah, I mean, you can send other people's density. Today I just sort of, I used to do a once a month global only event, and I combine that with my monthly webcast now, but I decided just to sort of do a planetary sort of thing anyway. But you can include your family members or pets or whatever in the process as well. I have a comment from Brooke. The praying mantis always shows up for me during energy transfers. I suspect that could be because you might have a connection with that collective, so something you may want to look into.
They are healers.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? A lot of positive comments online.
Yes.
Can you talk about a little bit about the energetic opposite that's already solved that we were today?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that's been coming in a lot lately because we talked about the fragmented soul pieces a moment ago. So what that means is right now we're magnetizing so much information from our other timelines. And this is ultimately good because this is how we become more multidimensional. I don't think ultimately we're meant to leave our bodies and become, these light beings that aren't going to be here grounded on the earth. Maybe, way down the line, but I don't think that's meant to happen, at least in the near future. But we're still assembling all of this information. So as we go through this process, every timeline has a lower vibrational potential and a positive. So think about the pain, for example, that you brought in. You may have already in another timeline experienced this pain, healed it, and on the other side used it as an experience to teach, to heal, to share with others. So if we have that information coming in right now and our vibration is low, we're going to draw the pain, not the healing, right? And that we can take that up into the collective. Okay, so every timeline has multiple experiences. The way that we magnetize those experiences or match them is through our vibration. And the thing that's been so hard lately is we have so much stress in the body from what's going on with this planetary shift. So the guides have been saying daily practice, daily practice, daily practice. Manage your stress. Because if you do, then you have a better potential to pull in this information that's going to help you heal the pain or help you uncover what your imprint is or create something new in the world. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Anyone else?
So I'm sorry. So this timeline of war, for example, we've already been on timelines of war that we have experienced peace. So we want to magnetize the peace, not the war from that timeline. Same scenario. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Anyone else? Well, we're still a little early here, but let's see.
How much time do we have?
About a little less than a half hour.
Okay.
So we planned a social here today for those of you who want to stay. Obviously, if you're online, we end the broadcast at the end of this event. So we have another few minutes left. So if anyone online has questions, feel free to type them in. But the social will not be broadcast. So it'll be in the other room. We have a restaurant out here that will be providing food, so you can purchase whatever. 5 minutes? They're on their way. Okay. That's okay. We still have time anyway. So this is the first time we've done this in a while, but we'll be doing this more regularly in the near future. So, question?
Yeah, pole shifts. How does that affect us dimensionally?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of general.
Right. Well, so think of Mother Earth as a living, breathing being. She has meridians within her, and the poles are basically polarizing the dimensional information within those meridians. And that's kind of the energetic way that our structure is built. So we have meridians within us too that connect to Earth. And this is essentially related to the grid shift. Okay, so what the guides have told me is that humanity tends to get really stagnant because we don't like change. And we're always in fear. So even in our awakening, we get stuck because we have this information that's coming in, but we tend to look at it, right, in a very singular way or a very separate way than what that open field of potential will allow. So when the poles reverse, what's happening is we're actually opening the portals within Earth to pull in new dimensional information. It's like, think of it as not only shifting our perspective, but bringing in more information. And we call for this, okay? So the Earth doesn't decide, the planets don't decide. We have a say in how much information we're ready to accept and how this whole thing works. So it's a collaborative effort. It's an orchestration. So what's happening right now as the poles are reversing is we're just receiving new dimensional information, which I think is showing up as these fragmented soul pieces. Again, you through time and all these different dimensions, that information is now accessible to you. And as we take this information in, it's vibrational, and we're integrating that right now. Our meridians are electromagnetically connected to Earth, and then we have all of these systems within us, right? We know we have our hormones, for example. Our hormones regulate our response electromagnetically to our outer reality. So as these poles are shifting and this new dimensional information is coming in, what I have understood is that many of us are becoming very overwhelmed because energetically our physical material is having to integrate all of this new stuff. and we were created in a dimension that's different than where we are headed. So managing our stress is really important because we've had a lot of hormonal interruptions because of this new information. Ultimately, this had to happen in order for this new grid to stabilize, because we have these patterns, right? These sacred geometric patterns. And I think in a couple of events ago, we talked about that snowflake pattern we all hold. And it's always changing and vibrating, and then it connects to other people, places, and things. And now we have the snow mound, which is like the collective. Well, that's essentially what these grids are, if you take that up to the next level. And so this third dimensional grid, I think I mentioned this, was segmented from universal support. So the Council of Light that we just talked about a moment ago, their intention or assignment is to make sure that energy flows through the universal grids to support all beings, all races, and to continue expansion. And if they see that humans are creating potentials that don't serve other races, they are going to segment that information in the grid so it doesn't flow to other realities and cause issues or problems. This pole reversal is coming to change that. Not to open the new grid back up, or the old grid, I should say, not to open the new grid, not to open the old grid back up, to expand the new grid to the earth. I know that sounds really technical, but that's kind of the vibrational breakdown of what's happening. This pole reversal was necessary because some of us who have been in, this conversation for a long period of time may have gotten stuck or stagnant in the way that they're perceiving the next steps. One of those examples, which is a classic thing that I bring in all the time in my readings, is people who, like Ethann's light workers, who are moving from being that classical geneticist to a vibrational healer. They have the idea, they have the information, but they're trying to force it through old channels. They're taking it back into the old grid and trying to push it through very narrow pathways about money, right? About, ego, all these other things. So this dimensional shift is helping those people that are now creating these new technologies, healing, all of these things, to be able to work it differently and not perceive that they have to push it through old grid means, and receive the support that they need, the currency that they need to allow that to be sourced in a way that everyone can live differently, right? Again, it's the whole setup. It's a setup for what's crumbling and what we're creating that has to take place of what's crumbling. But we're in this really weird time right now between those two worlds. And the guides talk about the earth as if it's split in two, but I don't want to say it in a way that you think we're going to leave the earth and have two separate earths, because I don't necessarily believe in physical that's the case. There's a lot of people out there talking about the fact that many of us are going to leave the planet and there's going to be a new earth and we're all going to be in different places. I think that we're all still going to be here on this one earth, but right now we're in the midst of this holographic shift. This war that's taking place, the reason Ethann doesn't experience it in his reality is it's a hologram that isn't really accessible to him in how he's creating. So that's the concept of the two earths. They're holographic earths on the same planet, right? Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah, we have time.
I've been debating whether to ask this one. But I've been thinking about it for a few months. So I've been thinking about the thousands of years of more of the traditional spiritual path, especially with gurus, like India, which is really a transmission, guru transmission, spiritual transmission way to enlightenment, right?
Right.
So, sorry.
That's okay.
What is that more of a side effect of kind of the nature of being on this grid that was very suppressed in some ways, very disconnected, where humanity suddenly, for these thousands of years, needed a guru to break them through to the other side for realization? Or is that a natural state of how it would be anywhere? It's just now we're in a different time, with this ascension time. So I've just been thinking about that one because I actually had a guru for a while, which is both very positive and very negative in a lot of ways. A lot of things that come out of the guru tradition, as we've seen many stories, is there's true realization there, there's true spiritual depth there, but there's something else going on. Right. And it seems to be, I've just been considering it a lot.
I have thoughts on this. I'm sure you do too. I'll start and then I'll hand it over to you. What the guides will always say is that we manifest the teachers not because they have to teach us something, but because they're showing us something about ourselves. And I think the whole guru analogy is sometimes we get so stuck in the fact that we have to be taught, that we have to be led, that that's the only path, right? That singular path to go, that we stay there too long, you know? And everything that we are meant to experience that's awakening us is going to magnetize to us. But we have to be in the present moment and be willing to vibrationally change and go with that flow in order to make that all work. So I think there's always going to be conduits here. I think there's always going to be teachers here. And that's why ultimately we have so many on the planet right now. I mean, my gosh, if you look around at the number of channels, healers, spiritual teachers we have, it's unbelievable. But it's because we have so many unique souls on the planet who are meant to experience these teachers, teachings, and things in order to bring themselves into a higher state of consciousness. So I think that we've just gotten stuck, maybe, right? Just a little too long in some of those paths. I don't think they're necessarily right or wrong. It's just that they come along to draw or pull something out of you to move you along your path. Make sense? Yeah. You have something to add?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's nothing inherently right or wrong with having a guru or being a guru. It's, but if we are here in this third dimensional reality to some degree, we have density. Even the most enlightened gurus have some density, and they are also human. So they're not beyond being human. So they still function in a human way in their experience, and they all have grown up in this reality through different kinds of conditioning and so on. So now, if your leg fell off, you're going to go to a doctor to have it sewn back on because the doctor is an expert in that particular field. In the same way, there are people who are experts in different fields. A guru is no different. If that person has certain connection to higher dimensions, or, you know, like Micheila channels higher dimensions, a lot of gurus who are very wise are actually channeling information. So they may be very gifted channels, but that doesn't mean that in every other way they're the best human being. There may be gurus who have the ability to raise your vibration or remove your density or whatever. There have been a lot of those throughout time as well. But that doesn't mean that they are people who you want to emulate in other ways. They have their own flaws or in their own personal issues that most of the time we don't see in the public because they don't express those things in the public, right? So there's nothing wrong with following a guru, but just understand that take away from that experience what it is for you. So if you're going to them because they have the ability to activate you or to raise your consciousness in some way, then take that away from it and move on with that. But you have to keep in mind that they all have their own issues. I know a lot of you are probably familiar with Osho. I mean, he was, I believe he was a very conscious person and he was very spiritually advanced. But on the other hand, he did a lot of crazy stuff. And so, you know, you can't take away from the fact that he was a human being and he grew up with certain kind of perceptions. And he had a certain personality and he was born, therefore he had an astrology chart that inclined him to certain kinds of behaviors that other people would not have. I think that, you know, in modern times in the spiritual movement, a lot of people are becoming very anti-guru. And I don't think that that's either right or wrong. I think everybody should follow whatever they feel drawn to do. But you have to keep it in perspective and understand that guru just means teacher. It's just basically just a person who's playing a role as a teacher. Now, if that guru expresses him or herself as better than you in some way, then that's another thing entirely. But that doesn't mean that they may not be an expert in a particular area that you're not, and that they may not be able to give you something that you yourself in that moment are not able to do for yourself yet. Now, we are all able to do everything. You know, if your leg falls off, you can reattach it yourself, theoretically, right? I mean, from a vibrational standpoint, we have the ability to create our realities however we want. But that doesn't mean you're going to do that. You're probably going to go to a hospital and have somebody attach it for you, right? So in the same way, we are all here as unique expressions of consciousness. Barb can see auras, I can't. I could beat my head against the wall. I'm not going to see auras anytime soon. You know, Micheila can channel. I can't do what she does. But I have my own unique talents as well. As do all of you. We're all unique expressions of consciousness, and therefore we all have certain areas that we are experts. And so we show up in the outer projection of one another's reality. So if you go to a guru and you experience something, whether positive or negative from that person, understand that they are just a projection of your own reality. So whatever you need to experience at that time is what you experience. I was just watching some YouTube video or something that was talking about how, you know, I'm sure you're all familiar with the Sims game, right? It's like a little artificial reality and computer. Well, they're sort of moving in the direction of making Sims artificially intelligent. So basically, once you create this reality, it goes on living on its own, and it continues to evolve on its own, has its own mind, its own reality. So can you imagine to the Sims as they become intelligent and they're creating their own reality in a computer simulated environment, what that would be like? Isn't that much like what we're experiencing? You know, we have this sort of intelligent reality that we're creating ourselves in every moment based on what we project. So is anything really real, or is it, you know, just like our gurus and so on, they're all just manifestations of our own consciousness. So if we ever suffer at the hands of somebody else, as a lot of people have at the hands of gurus, it is our own responsibility and our own projection. But I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that idea. There are a lot of people who, you know, we know somebody personally who follows a guru to quite an extreme, to the point that she carries cardboard cutouts of this person in her car. I think that's a bit much. But that having been said, if a person does possess a certain kind of energetic ability, that vibration is present in their image. So, you know, so there is no harm in putting a picture of that person on your wall. I think carrying them in your car is a little bit much, but so, I mean, I think when you disempower yourself and put that power in the hands of somebody else, that's where it might be a problem. But I think going to a guru and treating that experience as this person is there as an expert in this one particular area, no different than I would go to a doctor for their expertise, and gain that experience from them, I think that's perfectly valid and perfectly acceptable. So, anyone else?
Yeah.
As far as like hollow earth, plasma beings, anything to share how that relates to us?
Earth plasma beings?
Plasma beings.
No, Earth. Are you saying beings? Plasma
beings.
Oh, that. Well, I believe we're plasma beings. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, something I learned from Drumble.
Oh.
And also hollow earth too.
Okay. You know what? I'm just gonna channel in a little bit about that, because you want to know about the hollow earth. Is the hollow earth exist, or is there other beings that exist within the earth?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is what in the council comes in to talk about this. They want to say that the earth in itself is a multidimensional being. So in the same way that we discussed timelines, meaning that every timeline has multiple dimensions, within earth we have multiple dimensions. And so when we speak about hollow earth or beings living within earth, what we're perceiving is the hologram of multidimensional communities existing in the same space, which is actually what happens. It's just like that example we brought through about disclosure, right? There are certain things that have been hidden from us that exist in other dimensions, but nonetheless, they still tend to show up on Earth from time to time. That's because we now have the ability in physical to manifest them. So a lot of people that experience these inner Earth beings, they're just time traveling to other dimensions, right? And we can do that off planet as well. So I believe that they exist, but I don't believe they exist in the same dimension as we do, all right? And then as far as plasma, I think that we as humans exist in plasma as well. And I think our original state of being had a plasmic energy that continues to be within, our divine structure. This comes across a lot with people who are having multidimensional experiences. So when you think about time travel, for example, or leaving this planet and experiencing another dimension, you're doing that in a plasmic state. So the guides will often talk about, if you go on a ship, for example, if you had a ship experience, everything that you experienced on that ship exists in a plasmic state within you. And you come back into this dimension, but you don't always have access in this dimension to that plasmic energy or that information. So oftentimes when we raise our consciousness, what we're doing is we're accessing the information in that plasma, which is the remembrance of intergalactic experiences. So plasmic beings, I would say, are just advanced beings that have more access to their plasmic state, which means they can shape-shift time travel at will and remember it right off the bat. Where we as humans, we can't use our plasma that way in this reality so much, but I think it's happening more and more. So if you do have an intergalactic experience and you remember it, it's because you're stepping into that information, that plasmic state in this reality, which is actually a good sign. It means that you are accessing your light body and you're able to operate in that light body in a way that maybe some others here haven't been able to integrate yet. It's a technology.
Question, yes, so individually, can you recommend a frequency or tone music to maintain our body as we shift in and out of these timelines?
I think it's hard to recommend one. I always will go for the hertz frequencies that most resonate with me in the moment, and I switch them up a lot. So the guides have been talking about relieving stress as a daily practice. I've been gravitating especially towards those hertz frequencies that are geared toward those beneficial hormones like serotonin and raising those in the body. But you may gravitate towards something else. And I mean, I don't know if you have any input on this, but I think that it's good to switch it up. It's good to do what resonates with you, because sometimes I can scroll through those hertz frequencies in my device and think, oh, I want to play this one. And then I put it on and it's like nails on a chalkboard. And sometimes you think, well, but I need this, but I need this. No, you got to listen to your body, because if your body's not picking that up and it's giving you a loud no, definitely switch to something else.
Yeah, no, I'd need to know more about the situation to answer the question specifically, but even Mark Romero music is fine.
Mark Romero music is great, yeah.
Okay, got a question. I'm interested in a youth camp for my daughters. We're living in Las Vegas. Would like to know more about that.
Well, we can talk about our summer camp for a minute.
Yeah.
So we are at Flower of Life have designed a summer camp for kids. It's called our Seed of Life program. It's a weekend in wizardry. It's August
4th, 5th, 6th?
4th. It's the first weekend in August, 4th, 5th, and 6th here in Michigan, in the area. And we are bringing in teachers to assist kids with all, a variety of types of topics, from telekinesis to channeling, mediumship, intuitive art, auras, crystals. This is more of guiding them than it is teaching them, because they already obviously know how to do this stuff. We're providing an environment where they're able to express and create and research and go into that space that they're often suppressed in. So definitely check that out. What is it? Weekendinwizardry.com?
Yeah, weekendinwizardry.com.
Weekendinwizardry.com. Yep. 9 to 18. 9 to 18. Yeah.
And we're relaunching our webcast. So for people who are not local, we used to have events here physically where the kids met and we did things every couple of weeks. But we didn't have so much interest in the kids locally after a little while, so we started doing it virtually. So we're going to start doing them virtually again, where we'll have webcasts where teachers will be teaching kids around the world on a webcast format. Eventually, our plan is to launch an online education program for kids as well, and a K-12 school here locally, but that's a little ways off. So, okay, so let's see if there's anything else last minute. Could this be why I feel like I'm going through a time where nothing is happening and feels like I'm procrastinating? I think that was a comment.
Yeah, we talked. I talked about that actually not too long ago. I do think that this is, a time of integration for a lot of people. A lot of people have been saying they're in deep states of rest, and my theory on that is we're preparing for something right now.
Do we need audible tones or frequency to heal versus having the intention to bring a specific frequency to heal self or others? If the latter, how can we know the correct frequency for each individual or specific organ of the body?
I have to channel on that one. So, and the Palladians want to come in. They say, essentially, sound and intention are the same modality. When we access sound, we're just accessing information. So we have sounds that we can't even hear with the naked ear. Nonetheless, they still exist in this space. And we can channel those. Even though we can't hear them, we can access them. And that's exactly what happens when we're channeling here, is we're bringing in information from another dimension, and it's being interpreted through a conduit and expressed in human form. And sound waves are exactly the same thing. So when we have people who speak light language, we have people who are healing with tones, that's exactly what they're doing. They're accessing information that exists outside of this dimension and bringing it through in a way that's complementing something in the structure, either physically or non-physically. So to answer that question, it would be hard unless I know exactly what the intention is. But the example I think of is Lloyd Muir and his numbers. There's a man named Lloyd Muir who does healing with numbers, and what he's done is he has converted this information, this interdimensional information with everything down here in the body into number frequencies that you can read for anything and everything. If you have cancer, if you want to regrow your hair, if you want to magnetize a partner, relationship partner, you name it, he's got it all down to a science. So people are doing this in so many different ways. But I do believe it can be done through intention. And I just had a really, Palladians are my new, we just did a really interesting session this past week where there is a woman who's working with plants. She is working with earth resources as a holistic practitioner. And they were saying that she has this amazing gift to be able to tune into the vibration of that plant resource and be able to communicate with it such that she can match it to whoever needs this resource for healing. But it doesn't have to be the plant, that she could actually pick up on the vibration in the plant and offer that vibration without physically ingesting or using the plant. And that's exactly what Lloyd Muir does. He picks up on the vibrational essence of whatever it is your body needs to replenish and presents that in a vibrational way. So I think intention works in many ways. It doesn't have to be in sound or in language or in physical. It can be non-physical as well.
Well, we're out of time for today, so sorry for the couple of last questions here we didn't get to, but we're going to start the social, so I hope you guys will stick around, and those of you who are on the world, if you want to hop on a plane and get over here, we'll be here for a couple of hours.
Before everyone gets up, I wanted to let you know that I saw so many of you with your auras are going right through the ceiling, and it just, it was so beautiful to just see all these lights, just going right in connection into your higher powers. So it was really beautiful today, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
Food's in the other room. All right, we'll see you guys soon.